This program is made with assistance from New Zealand On Air for radio broadcast and through the accessmedia.nz website. Thank you, New Zealand On Air.
Kia ora, hello, and greetings from New Zealand. This is Kitty Fitton on Coast Access Radio across Kapiti and Horowhenua on 104.7 FM, and this is Ordinary Life. This is a programme about ordinary Kiwis living their lives with maybe the odd stuff thrown in for good measure to keep things interesting. And I am not a medical professional or a doctor or anything like that, but I think I'm qualified to talk about this kind of stuff because, well, I'm packing my very own chronic illness in the form of Parkinson's, and this week I'm talking to a friend of mine that I met on the Kapiti Coast. It's a lovely woman called Erin. And hello, Erin.
Hello, Kitty. How are you this morning?
I'm feeling quite cold. It's getting cold now, eh?
Yes, it is.
Winter is coming.
Yes,
to New Zealand. And I met you on the school run, didn't I?
Yeah, we were past each other at the Gates lots and both joined in a home and school committee for a little while and ran some fundraising stuff together. So
yeah,
that's how we met a few years ago.
And while we were on that fundraising committee, I remember we had a meeting, and the old cakes had come out, and biscuits, and Erin pulled out this packet from her bag and was like, "Hey, give me a moment. I just need to check this." And I thought, ooh, Erin has something wrong with her. Erin has an issue. And because I'm really nosy, I asked you about it. So, Erin, what special gift do you have?
Well, I have type 1 diabetes. And so what Kitty saw me doing that day was testing my blood sugar and then counting up in my head how much insulin I should give myself to be able to enjoy a piece of cake.
So do you have to do that every time you eat something?
Pretty much, yes.
Yeah. So what do you mind if I ask you what is type 1 diabetes?
Yeah, so type 1 diabetes, it's an autoimmune disorder, and it's where your immune system gets a bit confused and decides that the cells in your pancreas that produce insulin are the enemy and kills them.
That does not sound very good.
No, it's not good.
No?
No.
Wow. How do you find out you have something like that?
Well, for me it was, I guess I could just tell the story from the beginning. I was diagnosed when I was 36 years old.
Because aren't people born with this thing?
Well, yes, you either are born with it or not, but it's kind of lurks in your genes and waits for some kind of a trigger to become kick off. That's a good one.
Sorry.
That's okay. I was looking for the right word there. So yeah, it's just apparently, unbeknownst to anybody, I was born with the predisposition for it, and it struck me. Yeah, I was just lucky. Luck of the draw.
Oh my word.
Yeah.
So you're a bit unusual in that it kind of developed. Well, not unusual, but it just developed in you. And so did you just, I don't know, did you feel sick one day, or what happened?
Well, I was actually pregnant with my second child. And everything was ticking along nicely with the pregnancy until my husband and my child and I all came down with a cold. And then my cold developed into a sinus infection. So I was probably about 27, 28 weeks pregnant.
Oh, wow. Yeah,
and
difficult stage.
Yeah, so I was massive, and I had a 2-year-old. And now I've got a sinus infection. So I was feeling pretty miserable.
Tired,
yes,
yeah.
Yep. So all of the symptoms of early, like the onset of type 1, were pretty easily explained away by being hugely pregnant and having a sinus infection.
Because they are like being tired, aren't they? And feeling thirsty and stuff like that. Yes.
So, I was feeling probably one of the first symptoms that I remember was just waking up in the night extremely thirsty and needing to go to the toilet. But my nose is completely blocked. I'm breathing all through my mouth. So, of course, I've got dry mouth. And I'm hugely pregnant, so I wee all the time.
So you're like, right? Well, I'm pregnant and I've just had a cold and I've got an infection. And, yeah, you wouldn't think anything else at all, would you?
No. So then it moved on to starting to have extreme fatigue. Like, if I sat down, I would probably fall asleep, which is not great when you're looking after a 2-year-old who's not napping anymore.
But again, you're a pregnant woman.
But I'm a pregnant woman.
Just tired. Yeah. It's just hitting you harder than normally.
Yep. Then I started having dizzy spells. Like if I was sitting on the floor with my daughter or, bent over to help her change her nappy or something, I'd get up and I'd be real woozy.
Yeah.
And then I started having heart palpitations, which were really concerning. So I'm calling my midwife, and she says, "Oh, I think that you've got low iron. I'll drop you off a script for iron tablets and go to the lab, get a test." And I'm thinking, well, this is my second pregnancy, and I don't remember feeling like this at all in my first pregnancy.
People are full of advice, aren't they? Like, oh well, every pregnancy is different, and it could just be this, or you are looking pale, so maybe a bit more spinach.
Yeah. I was getting a lot of advice from people, but I think the final. So that day that I went off to get the blood test and pick up the iron tablets, I was noticing how breathless I was. That I felt like just walking around the house was really strenuous.
Yeah.
At this point in my life, I wasn't driving. My daughter and I were taking public transport and walking everywhere. Mm-hmm. And so we got up to the lab in Waikanae and finished up there and then walked up the hill to the Waikanae Play Center. And by the time, and if you're familiar with the layout of Waikanae, Waikanae Play Center is up near Waikanae School, and it's quite a good hill.
It's a good yomp.
It's a good little walk. So I basically collapse in tears through the Play Center gates, and all of my friends all rush out to me. "Are you okay?" And I'm like, "I feel like I'm gonna die." They're like, "Come down, sit down, and make a cup of tea, have a biscuit." I'm like, "Okay." So
put your feet up.
Yeah. So they looked after me really well. That Play Center family of mine, good people. So went home that day, and husband came home from work, went to bed, and woke up in the morning and realized that I really couldn't feel my baby moving as much. And that was really scary. And so I'm sitting on the edge of the bed, just poking my stomach, trying to get the baby to kick me. He finally kicks me. I was like, okay, cool. And get up, and my husband took one look at me. He says, "Erin, you look like you could fall over at any moment. I don't think that you should be home alone today with your daughter, with our daughter. We should get you to the doctor." I was like, okay. So called up, got an urgent appointment. Back when that was a thing. I'm sick today. I'll see you next Thursday. No, I'm not sick next Thursday. I'm sick today. Thank you. And they do what they make all pregnant women do, is pee in a cup. So get in there and I do a urine test, and doctor dipsticks it and says that there's really high sugar in my urine. He's like, "Ooh." And so he gets out the finger prick machine, tests my blood sugar, and my blood sugar is like through the roof. And he says, "Okay, you've got gestational diabetes, and I'm going to call the hospital and organize admission for you. You need help now."
Wow.
And I'm like, whoa, okay. So go home, pack up some bags. And at that point, I noticed when we were coming back out of Waikanae, we were stopped at a stoplight, and I couldn't read the number plate in front of me. My vision was so blurry, I couldn't read it. And these are all the signs of type 1 diabetes when it first, of having extremely high blood sugar. Breathlessness, tiredness, heart palpitations, extreme thirst, excessive urination, blurry vision. It's all right there, but it was all kind of getting masked by pregnancy. Yeah. So I went off to hospital for a week, got hooked up to IV drips and everything, insulin on board, and
wow, that must have been really hard on you and your husband, though. Yeah,
it was really hard because my husband got chucked in the deep end of solo parenting a 2-year-old.
And holding down a job, I guess.
So fortunately, his employer is extremely family oriented, so they're very understanding. And was in the hospital for a week, and I gotta tell you, I don't remember a whole lot
Really?
about what my days were there.
Wow.
Like, I was that sick. It was really touch and go. So they...
That must be quite scary to think about when you go back and think, because you've got your baby to think about as well as yourself. And, that's not a pleasant place to be.
No, it was not.
So they told you had gestational diabetes.
Yeah, and that's what made sense. I was pregnant. So
is that something that can happen to pregnant women?
Yes. I can't.
That's reversible, I guess.
Yeah, it usually just goes away as soon as baby's born.
Right.
So I was like, sweet, I got to put up with this until the baby's born. Cool. So they hand me my own little insulin pack with little mini needles, and you inject that into your and I use my belly because that's where the most squish is. And a little finger pricker machine that I need to use, often, too often. And sent me home. I called them my stabby gadgets. I got my little stabby gadgets that I got to take with me.
And you thought, this is just temporary.
This is temporary.
It's okay. It's a bit inconvenient, but
yeah. And then a couple weeks later, I was back in for a checkup, and that's when they told me it was actually type 1. That the doctor had suspicions that of my presentation wasn't quite in line with the usual onset of gestational diabetes, and so she ran some antibodies testing, and sure enough, the stabby gadgets are here to stay.
And did you have anybody with you when they told you that?
No, I was with my husband was out in the waiting room with my daughter. Wow. And yeah.
And how did you feel when they told you? Did you understand what it meant?
Oh, I understood what it meant. I've got several friends in the States who have either type 1 themselves or their children have type 1. And so I'm kind of familiar with that. Obviously I didn't know much of the details on it at the time, but...
Because you have those moments, don't you? Yeah. I mean, obviously I had my own. And you sit there and you think, wow, this is like a pivotal moment of my life. Something is changing here. And it's quite scary. Well, it was for me. I mean, how did your family react?
My husband was just as shocked as I was. And
did you do that whole driving home in a daze thing?
A little bit, yeah. Yeah. I remember there was, the people in the play center were so kind at that time. They put up a big meal train for us. And so people were bringing dinner round.
Oh, that's so good.
And a friend from Play Center stopped by with dinner, and I just burst into tears and it's type 1, it's type 1. And so she was really supportive.
It's hard, isn't it? You just kind of, because people either know or don't know, and you find yourself having to explain things to people. So in those early days, did you find it difficult to cope with your stabby gadgets? And I mean, did it take much getting used to?
It did. I mean, it's certain. I remember crying when they handed them to me and saying I have to poke myself, and that was a pretty big thing to get my head around. But I think in a way it was, if there is a bright side or a silver lining, I don't know. Developing it while I was pregnant. When you're pregnant, your body's already kind of hijacked. And you're kind of used to extra medical things going on, and so it was just another thing that I had to do to keep my baby safe. And so I just kind of sucked it up and powered on. I think I probably, if I hadn't been pregnant at the time, I might have had a little bit of a harder time coping with it. But
because you do just kind of get on with it for the sake of your child, don't you? But then obviously it's no longer a temporary thing. So how did it impact your life much on a day-to-day basis?
Well, I suddenly had to think about every single thing I put in my mouth.
Well,
so I had to had to be reading packets and counting up carbohydrates and figuring out how much insulin to take. And
so you mentioned carbohydrates, but most people think about sugar when you think about diabetes. So is the carbohydrates important?
Yeah. So carbohydrates are the building blocks of your cells. Like it's your cell's favorite food. All of your cells want glucose. And carbohydrates come from anything that is it's plant-based things. So fruit, vegetables, obviously sugar.
It's got a lot of glucose in it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so it's everything from carrots right up to fizzy drink. Are sources of glucose, and they're essential for life. You need glucose, but it takes insulin to process that glucose. So when you don't have insulin on board, your cells don't get the food that they need, and the level of sugar raises high in your bloodstream, which your organs don't like, your tissues don't like that.
So where do the carbohydrates come into it?
Well,
forgive me for being food.
That's okay. That's all right. So
I guess all carbs contain an element of sugar, I guess.
Yes, yeah, carbohydrates are sugar. Sugar is carbohydrate.
Oh,
so
if only I knew more about science.
It's all right. So when you think about people who are doing low carb diets, they're focusing more on protein, and like like vegetables, leafy greens and whatnot. High carbohydrate things are things like rice, pasta, flour, baking, a fizzy drink, takeaways. Those kinds of things tend to be really high in carbohydrates.
Wow, and that means that therefore high in sugar.
Yes.
There you go. I have learned something.
Yeah.
I did not know that. So your diet is really important then, and you'll be constantly checking stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And, I mean, so like the time when I saw you and they had the cakes, and you clearly were like, oh, if I'm going to eat this cake, I have to test my blood sugar. Do you ever does it freak people out, or what are people's reactions when you're out?
Well, I don't. Well, it probably does freak people out, but it doesn't stop me because it's just part of my life. It's what I have to do. So I won't flaunt it in front of people and be like, I'm going to stab my finger. Want to squirt? No. Watch me stab me. Well, I try to be kind of discreet about it, but it's also just a part of my reality.
Yeah.
And, so no, I'm not going to run off to the bathroom to take care of these things. I'm going to do it right there at the table because that's where I'm going to eat.
So do some people treat you differently, or have you had any reactions?
They'll ask. Sometimes people will ask, what's that? I've never had strangers in the wild ask me anything, but it's usually sitting around at a morning tea at school or something where maybe people don't know me that well.
Northern woman might go,
yes, maybe.
Yeah.
I'm always happy to talk about it though. I think it's important stuff to know, but.
Yeah, that's interesting. So you have this thing, and you have to. I mean, what happens if you don't take your insulin? Because you were clearly sick for some time.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, people are always saying stuff to me like, "Oh, you take a lot of tablets. Can you not just take a few less or something like that?" How is it for you? What happens if you don't take your medication?
Well, ultimately death.
That's cheery.
Yes, I know. I'm a bucket of fun. No, because what happens if I don't take insulin, since my body doesn't naturally produce it? Pretty much how it works is that you've got glucose being processed in your body from when you eat, and the pancreas, which is where your insulin comes from, detects glucose and squirts out the right amount of insulin to cover that glucose. And then it goes around to all the cells and hands, each cell says, yes, I'll have a little bit. Yes, I'll have a little bit. Nope, I don't need any more. Mm-hmm. And then at the end, the insulin helps the glucose be released from the body through urine. Mm. So without insulin, you've got a bunch of hungry cells. You've got a bunch of glucose, but the glucose can't get to the cell.
Oh, which explains why.
Yes. Yeah. So then what you end up with is cells that are really, really angry because they're hungry. Blood that is really, really high in sugar, which the tissues don't like. And so the cells, they demand food. So they're going to do something called the ketosis. You might have heard this word. So they start breaking down fat to feed the cells. Mm-hmm. This sounds like a fantastic plan. It really is not, because the byproduct of the breaking down of fat to feed the cells is something called ketones.
Yeah.
Ketones are highly acidic. So now you've got blood that's full of sugar and acid. I remember I watched a little webinar early on with a doctor who was kind of explaining it in normal people speak. And he basically said, this is not compatible with life.
Right.
And that, I was like, well, that's succinct. I get it. If you don't take insulin, you end up in a state called diabetic ketoacidosis, and that will kill you. And that's I was very, very, very close to that when I was diagnosed.
So how long would that take?
It could take days. I actually read a horrific story in the news this morning. In Australia, a little 8-year-old girl with type 1, and her church decided they were going to pray it away for her. And they stopped giving her insulin for 8 days, and she died. So it took that little girl 8 days to die without insulin. Yeah. They're all up for murder and manslaughter charges, as they should be.
I read a really interesting piece about people in the States, trying to ration insulin. And that had the same effect because of the healthcare system. Sorry, you say the words healthcare laughingly.
Yes.
So does treatment and support in New Zealand pretty good then?
I feel that it is. No system is perfect, but I see a specialist once a year, and then I catch up with my GP once a year. And when I need a script, I just message my GP, and he hooks me up with more insulin, and I go pick it up.
That's great.
So it's it's pretty easy. It's not free, but it's pretty darn close.
Yeah. I mean, we have the prescriptions, and the doctor's visits, but it could be a lot worse, couldn't it?
Yeah, it's not based on in the States. It's based on insurance, and that could be really tricky. You hear a lot of uni students struggling with this because they're no longer eligible to be on their parents' medical insurance.
Yeah.
However, they're not working enough hours or having the right kind of jobs that offers comprehensive medical insurance. So, like when I was a waitress in uni, if I wanted the insurance plan, I was basically giving up my entire paycheck and having to live on whatever tips I made.
Yeah.
And so I needed beer money, man. Screw healthcare.
What part of the States are you from? I'm going to digress.
I'm from Colorado. I've lived in New Zealand for 18 years, so.
Are you a Kiwi now?
I've got residency.
Yeah.
I might go for citizenship someday, I'm not sure.
What do you think could be done to improve things for people who've got diabetes?
I know, it's one of those things, like, if it's not affecting your life, why would you need to know more about it?
Yeah.
But it'd be really cool if people just knew a little bit more.
Yeah.
A little bit more understanding.
I know.
Yeah, because, the flip side of your blood sugar going too high is the issue of it going too low. If you don't get your insulin quite right, you can have too low blood sugar where your brain basically shuts down and you can die.
And we haven't talked about it much, but do people ever confuse it with type 2 diabetes?
Oh, yes.
How does that make you feel?
Well, again, I can't blame the general public for not knowing, because the media is really vague on it. They just say diabetes.
Yeah.
And so you think that it's the same. I think about stupid comments that I've had, when I've said that I've got type 1, and they've been like, well, but you're not overweight. I'm like, but that doesn't matter. Things like that. So the difference between the two is important.
So finally, knowing what you know now, would you do anything differently in your past, or are you okay where you are, or anything you could have done to avoid it? Or...
No, it's a bad luck disease, so there's no prevention, there's no cure. There's no way to detect it.
Wow.
Yeah,
Any silver linings at all?
I don't snack as much. So that's curbed the afternoon cookie trough that I used to do, but so I guess my health has improved, and in terms of me being a lot more mindful of my diet. So that's a plus side.
I'm very glad that you get the healthcare that you need, and that you've got the support of all your friends, and particularly the play centre people sound awesome.
They are.
Yeah. Thank you very much for coming in and talking to me about it, because I've certainly learned heaps, which is great. Was there a song you wanted to play, or?
I think we should hear more Tori Amos. She's my favourite.
She's your favourite. So
Yeah.
should we choose a Tori Amos track?
That would be great.
All right, that's great.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much for coming in. If anybody wants to find out anything more about diabetes, or just get in touch with me or talk about maybe there's something you want to raise yourself that you think needs to be heard about, you can contact me at kittyfitton.com. That's Kitty, F for Foxtrot, ITTON.com. You can find all the past episodes there and on coastaccessradio.org.nz. This has been Ordinary Life. This has been Erin Bryson and Kitty Fitton. Thank you for listening.
Snow can wait, I forgot my mittens. Wipe my nose, get my new boots on. I get a little warm in my heart when I think of winter. I put my hand in my father's glove. I run off where the drifts get deeper. Sleeping Beauty trips me with a frown. I hear a voice, you must learn to stand up for yourself, 'cause I can't always be around. He says, when you gonna make up your mind? When you gonna love you as much as I do? When you gonna make up your mind? 'Cause things are gonna change so fast. All the white horses are still in bed. I tell you that I'll always want you near. You say that things change, my dear. Boys get discovered as winter melts. Flowers competing for the sun. Skating around the truth who I am. But I know that the ice is getting thin. When you gonna make up your mind? When you gonna love you as much as I do? When you gonna make up your mind? 'Cause things are gonna change so fast. All the white horses are still in bed. I tell you that I'll always want you near. You say that things change, my dear. Hair is gray and the fires are burning. So many dreams on the shelf. You say I wanted you to be proud of me. I always wanted that myself. When you gonna make up your mind? When you gonna love you as much as I do? When you gonna make up your mind? 'Cause things are gonna change so fast. All the white horses are gone ahead. I tell you that